Hello and welcome to the Business and Banking Dialogue Show, your one-stop program for the best in the topic of finance and economy. I'm KK, your moderator for today's show. We are live across, besides the EPS channel, we are also live on social media channels like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, sorry for the slight delay. Our guest had a little technical difficulty in connecting. So now we are on, and today's topic is emerging innovation in payments. Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Anna May, Fintech leader and senior advisor at Truffle Capital. Good morning, Anna.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to your webinar.
Pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, Anna brings 20 years of experience in driving and fostering banking and payments innovation in Europe. You see her profile in a short while. She is the founder and CEO of Creative Link, connecting the dots in banking and payments. She combines hands-on experience with a global strategic approach across various sectors: payments, artificial intelligence, fintech, consulting. So she's also a senior advisor at the Truffle Capital, jury member and expert at the European Innovation Council. She has been featured, ladies and gentlemen, in the top 10 women in fintech in the year August 2020. So that's a great achievement. Senior lecturer at the CFTE Center for Finance, Technology and Entrepreneurship, and faculty member at the WBAF Business School, Business Transformation, Fintech. And she's also written a book, co-author of Fintech book and the AI book. So welcome to the show, Anna.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you for introducing myself to the audience. Very nice of you, KK.
Okay, thanks for coming, Anna, for the show. So, ladies and gentlemen, fintech is evolving at a furious pace. Okay, the novel applications of this technology are spawning an unprecedented number of new businesses and whole new business sectors. The almost daily progress in digital technology and the scorching pace of internet data penetration and smartphones is propelling this disruption. The disruption is so high that it is making older established systems almost irrelevant. Thriving and established payment businesses are forced to rethink, redo, and make their systems more relevant than ever before. So we're going to talk about today on the emerging payment landscape that's coming across to us. We've had some discussions on payments, so let's look at what are the things that are new things that are coming and get an international view from Anna. So before we deep dive into the future of payments, please tell us how the global transaction landscape will evolve in the next few years.
Okay, thank you for this question. And of course, I just do cover just the international perspective, but I'm very much focused due to my professional engagements and of course my areas of expertise in European markets. And definitely I have a very Europe focused perspective, which is a common area. So we have the EU regulation in place, for example, but talking about the global transaction payments, definitely we can talk about some trends that are emerging, and they are just like you said, global trends. And you mentioned one of these, so definitely the mobile uptake and how people they are using not only smartphones, but of course just smartphones are a very vital part of that, but also the mobile phones generally speaking that can be a part of financial inclusion, because we are aware of such payment solutions that are not based on smartphones. For example, even this is from India, of course, Google Pay in India, which is using a kind of audio QR codes for people who don't have just the smartphones. But so just talking about the use of mobile phones and smartphones, definitely this is something going into digital payments, and the proliferation of mobile and definitely using mobile phones for payments and also for accessing banking services, not only payments. So definitely this is one of the global trends, with some of the markets that are really in the forefront. So some of the Asian markets, but also European markets. So people are just using the phones. And we also have in Europe, we have like some not only mobile payment schemes, but also wallet schemes, because this is another trend. Of course, we are all aware of the global wallets, including, of course, just big tech companies like Google, like Apple, and of course, they wallets and they payment schemes, but also, of course, Asian giants like WeChat or Alipay. But of course, there are a lot of local schemes and local schemes and mobile schemes that are wallet-based. And in Europe, there is a lot of these organizations, especially in the Nordics. We have Swish, for example. We have other payment schemes. So we have a lot of them in Italy, in Austria, in Poland, for example. There is a big mobile payment scheme initiated by banks. So this is, again, the trend into mobile, very much into digital payments, but covering mobile. And of course, just wallet-based transactions. Another big trend, if you look at the global transactions, of course, this is something going into the cashless. This is just the constant trend into the cashless society. And of course, pandemic situation and post-pandemic definitely just enhanced it and accelerated the development of cashless payments. So if we talk about mobile, that's quite obvious. So apart from the card, of course, that are going more and more contactless for the offline world, for the physical POS, we definitely should mention like alternative methods into payments. So this is not only card-based solutions or schemes. Definitely, we have a lot of new payment mechanism or payment methods. And I mentioned the wallet-based solutions, but of course, with the rise of open banking that we will probably cover in our conversation, this is, of course, just the enabler or the driving force standing behind the account-to-account payments that can be used for e-commerce transactions, that can be used also for the offline world, but definitely bank transfers that are becoming more and more fast and instant are also very important here. So if you look at the global landscape, definitely we have the shift not only into digital we used to have before, but into mobile, definitely into cashless and contactless. And we have like a new alternative payments coming into play in many different geographies. And I think one important point to make here is that, of course, we have the global schemes that are like, international, and they're just a common ground for many different solutions, but we also have local schemes. And this is one of the, in a way, holy grails of payments, but definitely a challenge here to make them interoperable. So we have interoperability issue here, which is very important for the payment world. And of course, then we can also talk about new solutions, and definitely we'll cover that. So we have connected payments, we have social payments, we have conversational payments, because all this together is going into the seamless and invisible payments.
Okay. So how has been have you seen any new payment systems emerging during this pandemic in Europe?
So definitely in Europe, we are very much focused on open banking. So as one of the functionalities in the scope of open banking everywhere, apart from the account aggregation, there is a payment initiation function. So of course, this is something enabling payments from the account to account, and definitely not only for the B2C, so for consumers to pay for the goods and services in this way. So you can just pay to the merchant, for example, from a bank account, but this is also going into B2B. So there are some systems and there are some platforms that are enabling B2B payments. So this is one of the trends. Of course, the other is generally speaking, in the banking area, the trend toward instant or fast payments. So if I talk about the bank transfers, to make them instant, not only on a local level, on a domestic level, but also on a cross-border level. And this is not only about SEPA, which is a common system for euro-based, but also for other currencies, because we still have them, of course, in Europe. So this is an initiative towards the cross-border, but instant cross-border payments to make them real time. And another initiative, or maybe not initiative, but another phenomenon that I would like to raise here or to highlight here is definitely subscription. So we used to have recurring transactions, and we all know the recurring transactions based on card payments, credit card payments. Yeah. But definitely this is one of the solutions, especially for the e-commerce, for any repetitive transactions, if you use any of the applications or any good of the services. But definitely there is also subscriptions emerging on the account to account base, so just based on the bank transfer. This is again something falling under the open banking regime, but this is a very vital trend again. So subscription and subscription-based payments, especially going into this new like digital economy, also shared economy. And sharing economy, this is something very important. So I would say we have a lot of, probably not new system, but a lot of companies, including fintech players, coming into play. And of course, they also partner with banks in order to make it happen. One of the examples is Mina Technologies. Fintechs, exactly what I said before, focus on subscriptions. They partner with ING, so one of the biggest banks in Europe. And they enable subscription payments, and also based on the open banking, and also just the subscription management as well.
Yeah, wonderful. That's good to hear. Anna, what are the you've been looking at the entire landscape of Europe, okay? Focus on Europe. What are the mega trends that will change the way payments are made worldwide? You could look at like a global view also, that this is going to change.
Yeah, sure. So I would really break it down into three categories, because what we see, definitely there are like technological trends or technology related trends. So we have new technologies coming into play, and I will cover them in a minute. We also have new regulations. So we have the regulatory framework, which usually adapt some changes and of course follow the changing technology landscape. But this is very important, as for example, open banking and some other related to payments regulations that really enable the development and the rise of payments. And we also have like new models and a new functionality scope for payments. And I would say that all these trends, definitely they fall under one of these three categories. So we have technology, of course, we have regulation, and we have functionality scope, and of course, new models. And of course, they are underlined by some social and demographic changes that we mentioned already. So for example, mobile phone use, or definitely the consumption of mobile data. Also the uptake of not only social platforms, but messaging platforms. They can give rise to some of the technologies. So starting from technologies, what I would highlight here is definitely just enabling this seamless and invisible interface. And it can be done by use of different technologies. One of my favorite is looking into the voice, really, and voice-enabled services. So we now see, and we know that a lot of people already, a lot of users, they consume either services navigated by voice or searched by voice. So this is already done via Google and some other applications. And this is something what is happening. And of course, we have more and more of examples when voice is applied to the banking services and payments. And we can call it conversational AI, generally speaking, but conversational banking on payments or even finance. And I'm a big advocate for voice. I even curated the course on the conversational AI, its applications in banking and finance with CFT, Center for Finance Technology and Entrepreneurship. So when I talk about different use cases. So we have either chatbots with text, or we have, of course, the voice bots with voice that are just definitely harder to develop. This is one of the avenues to pursue. Another, which is not like a disruptive technology or a very innovative one, we know it, but this is a growing trend again, or maybe this is something rediscovered. This is the rise or revival of QR codes. And we see more applications of QR codes, not only in the physical environment. So of course, this is the QR codes are proliferated in Asia, everywhere, in Thailand, in Singapore, in India, in Indonesia, of course, even in very small locations. But of course, we can also use QR codes to interact in the e-commerce between mobile and internet. So this is, so we see a lot of QR codes and QR enabled payments as well. So I think this is a kind of revival, just revival of QR codes. Another technology which can really help with is biometrics. And biometrics is like a vague broad area, because we can start from the vein biometrics or even fingerprints, but definitely we talk about biometrics, so vein biometrics. But of course, there are some like new innovation or new innovative solutions in Europe, just covering the face recognition and face biometrics or eye biometrics. So there is a solution developed by OP Financial Group in the Nordics, in Finland, and they tested it out in the restaurants and just locally, and then they spread it into some of the locations throughout the country. So you can initiate the payment using your face. So of course you can authenticate the payment. There are some of the example of face recognitions in other countries, of course, in the UK and in Russia, for example. In the UK, there is a Fintech FingerPay. So this is the application of vein biometrics. So we have like different types of biometrics. We also have behavioral biometrics. So definitely this is a very interesting trend, and we don't have that much time to cover it, because it's a fascinating area, of course, not only because of the technology, but of course, just because of the use cases and also regulations involved in that. And of course, we talked about subscription. This will be something in the functional scope, and of course, new models of payment, but definitely subscription. We even talk about subscription economy will be something important here. And I mentioned regulations. So definitely regulations. This is not only open banking, because we have this in different parts of the world. Of course, we have the consumer data right in Australia, and they really went beyond banking. They incorporated other sectors like retail, like utilities, and they are really trying to create this open data ecosystem. Of course, we have some of the initiatives in Asia, and for example, in Singapore, when we have open banking playbook released by monetary authority there, Singapore Monetary Authority, and so MAS, and definitely in Europe we have like a common regulatory framework, which is PSD2. That was we have been living with PSD2 for more than a year, and of course this is in force already, and all the stakeholders that were obliged to comply with PSD2, they already they are compliant. And of course there are new players into this game, so TPP, third-party providers. So we see how the ecosystem is growing, and every quarter we observe new players coming into this play as TPPs. But of course we are looking very much into PSD3. So PSD3 will cover not only account aggregation or payment initiation, but also other areas and just banking services and products, for example, deposits or credits. And UK, which is no longer the part of the EU, so basically they have their own regime right now. They have their own financial conduct authority. So they already have the advisory group on the so-called PSD3, but basically going into open finance, because this is a very important trend as well. Not only open banking, but opening up other services, banking services, and even reaching out to other sectors. So definitely we have open finance phenomenon here as well. So, and not only open banking, because we also have some new directive on anti-money laundering, or KYC. There is a lot of payment related regulations. One of the very interesting, and I will touch this functionality scope and new models. This is the BNPL. BNPL stands for Buy Now, Pay Later. And we observed everywhere in the world a lot of new players and functionalities into Buy Now, Pay Later. So the credit facility, either this is a prolonged payment, but usually this is a payment in installments. So the users can really just benefit from the credit involved. And this is an instant credit. So when you buy, when you shop online, basically in the moment of paying, you can split your payment into installment, or just use the 30-day free of charge credit, for example. And these are new models. I mentioned new models. So BNPL, definitely this is one of the new models. And there's a lot of new fintech players, not only well established like Klarna or Affirm. These are really just leaders in this area, but there are a lot of other, even like local or regional players in BNPL. So this is a hot trend, definitely. So we will see how it develops, but definitely there's an uptick for credit facilities that can be really instant. But I mentioned regulations, and this is again something related to regulations, because FCA, so Financial Conduct Authority in the UK, they already touched upon BNPL, and they are trying to create a new regulatory framework for that, because this is again related to credit facility. And as you know, and as everybody knows, fintechs, most of the fintechs, they are not regulated, and some of them, they are payment institutions, but for credit, of course, they have to have some more regulation. There's a lot of interesting things happening around the world right now.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely. You talked about the new functionalities, which is, you call it a binoculator. What is that?
Buy now, pay later, yes.
Or buy now and pay later.
Yeah, so this is the credit facility, because you can buy now and pay later. So because usually it's either, as I said, payment in installment, so you can use the credit, or it can be also in the form of, like, prolonged payment. So you have 30 days like free of charge of credit that you can use as a user. Sometimes these facilities are also related to credit cards, so you can use your credit in charge of the credit card. So there are like different mechanisms, but the logic is the same. So you can buy now, you can shop now, you can buy now, and you can pay later, especially for not a low value, but for higher value products and services. Usually it's for luxury goods, or for sunglasses, for jewelry, for some electronic devices that you can buy online, of course. But it just very much depends on the merchants, because this is exactly in most cases, this is like a merchant initiated and merchant-backed facility. So of course, merchant can benefit from the higher conversion and for, like, just higher value of transaction, but of course they pay some cost of the credit that is being used by consumers.
Yeah, very interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you people also getting interested in the way I am looking at things. Look at the trends that are happening. Almost in every country. A lot of new things coming out. Every country, every bank, every regulator is looking at how you can develop new products, bring it to the citizens, and how we can help the citizens during normal times, and more specifically this pandemic time, when perhaps income is hard to come by. And so one of the things that Anna talked about is the buy now, pay later. Maybe not be new, but it's like it is an innovation. It is a kind of putting new things across an old idea, but bringing it along and making a success and backing it with technology. I think that's the key out there. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, I would be happy to bring it back to Anna to answer your queries. Should you want to ask a question directly to her on the topic of emerging payments, you could also do that. Raise your hand, and the digital team will get you across to her. So I look forward to your question. Anna, tell us about the advances in like payments, but not real-time payment technologies that will radically change the way domestic and cross-border payments are happening these days.
Okay, thank you for this question. So I touched upon this slightly at the beginning of our conversation, because I said, okay, just this global transaction landscape is changing, or has been changing in front of our eyes, and it does cover also the cross-border payments. Of course, just this is the global outlook, but also correspondent banking, because as we know historically, not only the payments are banking domain, but also especially the cross-border, and that's why it's called correspondent banking, has been a bank's domain. But now we see a lot of new initiatives, and definitely on a cross-border level, on the international level, but also new players coming into this field. So these are not only banks, surprisingly, that are just providing these kind of services, but also new platforms. And here, what I would like to underline, so if we go into cross-border, definitely there is a challenge of instant and fast payments. So instant real-time cross-border payments covering like most of the currencies. So I said also at the EU level, we have the initiative of instant cross-border payments. But apart from them, there is another phenomenon, so the new players, and of course, not only banks. So banks are changing because banks are also partnering with these new players, and with the new opening up the infrastructure, because this is usually the problem of the core banking infrastructure, and of course payment models and payment infrastructures being on top of that. So, but now banks, incumbent banks, I'm talking about incumbent banks, not new banks, are also touching upon this area. So just they are opening up the architecture. It's more like modular, so you can integrate with more partners. So we know these examples that incumbent banks, they partnered with some of the new players. But also just talking about these new players, either we have platforms, and this is also very important because we have this changing model. I was talking about the models. So we not only have the just new players, we also have these new models of platforms. We also have just new models of partnerships. And there's this very much in banks, fintech, but also fintech. So, and for example, probably everybody knows Transferwise. They very recently, they rebranded to Wise. And this is a very smart movement because Transferwise, they were like a leader, or they're still one of the leading companies in terms of the cross-border payments, especially for B2C users, but not only. So for consumers, and you can transfer your money around the world, and you can just do the FX, you can just change the currency, so you can just do different currency payments. But just coming back to the issue I mentioned, that they rebranded, because transfer, of course, this is something you associated money transfers. So they were focused on that. But probably with this Wise, just because they are only Wise now, so it means that they enter like different banking services, which is also quite smart, and they can expand their portfolio. So Transferwise is, of course, one of the examples of the cross-border currency platforms, very successful one. But of course, we have some other players. We also have the new fintechs that are just platforms, or SaaS platforms for banks, and just a new way of executing this cross-border payments in a fast and instant way. And definitely this is something which is emerging. So we have a lot of new companies. Of course, we have some of the companies that provide these services based on new technology, so blockchain. but we also have some of the example of a new clearing houses in a way. So this was something that was really just reserved for banks or for banking players. So this will be changing definitely towards the real-time multi-currency payments, also covering some of the niche or exotic currencies. But definitely just the correspondent banking or multi-currency payments or cross-border payments, they will not only be kept by incumbent banks. Of course, neobanks are touching that, but we will see more and more of the platforms coming into this play, like new fintech, but also tech players, I would say.
Okay, that's nice. Thanks, Anna. Anna, can we take a couple of questions? Yeah. So Harsh asked a question. How do you see payment infrastructure evolve?
Okay, thank you for this question, although it's broad, because very much depends if we're talking about, this is what we touched about the, for example, bank transfers and cross-border payments in real time, and when the banks and also clearing houses on the domestic but also international level are involved. This is entire infrastructure, and of course, what I say, I would see more of partnerships and definitely just platforms involved. So it means there will be not only just core banking system and on-prem is involved, but of course we will see more and more, and banks are also initiated these projects in the cloud, so shifting into the cloud. So this is a very, very, I would say, sensitive area, but we see some of these examples already that the payment infrastructure is being held in the cloud. For example, we have one of the examples, again, in the Nordics, in Europe, there is a fintech called Infuse, and they were one of the first players to enter cloud and of course payments in the cloud. But as for now, it's limited to cards. So definitely cards and card infrastructure is another layer or another dimension here. So, and of course, how it's being structured right now. So we have, of course, payment organizations, we have card organizations, card schemes, and we have banks and issuing banks, we have acquire. So definitely there will be a lot of changes towards platforms, towards partnerships, towards more and more open architecture and infrastructure, and also just shifting into the cloud, as I said, and modular. So I can also imagine, and we see that as well, like multiplayer infrastructure. So you use the partnerships and different platforms. So yeah, just briefly speaking.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Harsh, for a good question. I hope you got the answers. Let's take a question from Mr. Padmanabhan. Padmanabhan is an ex-regulator. So what is your view on importance of interoperability in the emerging payment space? Something which is very topical in India right now, interoperability of various digital platforms. So what's your view on interoperability?
That's a great question. And I mentioned interoperability, I think, in the first, when you asked the first question about some of the emerging trends, because I really see this as an issue. And of course, with a lot of global schemes and international payments, we still have like majority of payments that are local and domestic. And of course, these are not only the interoperability that I understand on the geographical level, because of course, this is one of the dimensions that we have like local wallet-based schemes. And even in Europe or in Asian countries, some systems, they don't really talk to each other. That's the first dimension. So like geographically speaking, but we definitely also have this payment methods or product-based interoperability, which is even more important in some cases. So just this holy grail on the challenge of interoperability will be, of course, that different payment methods can talk to each other. One of the examples being like, just we have like peer-to-peer payments, of course, which are very important for the ecosystems. And of course, you can just make transfers and payments from bank account to bank account. But of course, in some of the countries, you can still make these payments card to card, so C2C. But just the real beauty will be just to make this from bank account to card, from card to bank account. So this is also the idea and the concept of interoperability. And again, there is a kind of, because there are also fintechs helping on that. There is a company called Centiglobe, another Nordic, so Scandinavian example. I just tend to this region, but they are very much advanced and very much innovative, especially in payments and open banking. So maybe that's why I'm just listing a lot of examples from the Nordics, but definitely I also just work closely with some of the fintechs there. So, and this company is called Centiglobe. And what they are trying to do is exactly to try to help with this interoperability issue. There is, because there are also some national card schemes and not only wallet-based solutions, but also some national payment schemes. And there is a payment scheme in Turkey, for example. They have their own card, and they have apart from Visa, of course, MasterCard and some other. And also in Russia, they have their own national payment initiative. So, and this is like, just domestic one, but what they did, I think it was not last year, but it was in 2019. So they signed the agreement with MasterCard to make these transactions cross-border and to talk with MasterCard cards. So these are some examples of how interoperability can be enhanced. But of course, we need some more partnerships, I would say, in order to make these payments more interoperable. And of course, account-to-account payments can really help a lot in terms of interoperability, because if we have the global cross-border not even infrastructure, but payment scheme, that's okay. But of course, there is still a lot to do on the card side. And as said, apart from the global payments, there is still a lot in the local and domestic initiatives. And if we talk, for example, about financial inclusion and some emerging countries, like developing countries, like countries in Africa and some countries in Asia, that they really need some more of financial inclusion, that's another dimension of interoperability, because people, they don't really have bank accounts there. For example, they have their wallets, but not the global ones, but for example, just mobile wallets. And yeah, so I think this is something, a kind of challenge for the payments world.
So you said that there are companies which are working on interoperability, but that has not yet been established, right? Is it working? Say a wallet interoperability, QR codes,
yeah. So
any of them?
No, if we talk about because we also just in Europe, we have a lot of dispersed local wallets, mobile wallets. So this is what I also mentioned. Yeah. And they are on a local basis, although there are some attempts to go cross-border. And for example, Bleak in Poland, they signed some of the partnerships and some of the agreements with other players to scale into other geographies. They also signed with MasterCard. And I think this is also quite important to mention what Visa and MasterCard are doing, because they are also going into interoperability. And MasterCard has partnered with Vocalink a long time ago, and they're also looking into fintechs and into account-to-account payments. And also Visa, they just haven't managed to acquire Plate because of some different criteria involved, like regulation as well. But they acquire just before one of the account-to-account companies, and they are also going into this path. So this is showing what really just big payment schemes around the world are trying to do in order to achieve interoperability, and also to increase to expand the portfolio of payments, because everybody see that these are not only cards, but of course alternative payment methods. And coming back to the local schemes, because as I said, Visa and MasterCard can be quite helpful about that. But like 2 years ago, just there is an initiative of mobile wallets. This is called like Mobile Payments Association, that there's a broader name for that. But this is exactly an initiative of very domestic local mobile wallets schemes in Europe, and they teamed up, they partnered together. So they started with 6, I think, organizations. Now they just grew up to 12 or 13. So they cover Italy, they cover France, Switzerland, Sweden, Poland, Austria, Germany. So most of the geographies, and they partner as like local mobile schemes just to promote and to maybe to make it more interoperable as an entire concept in Europe.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. The second question that Mr. Padmanabhan is asking is, it is said that innovation does not breed under too much of regulated space. So how do regulators balance innovation and balance customer protection, an issue of which is assuming importance?
Well, that's a brilliant question, because yes, I've always been on a strategy product development side, so, and on innovation and management as well. So I was always pushing innovation. And as a business and product oriented person, of course, we have to be compliant with regulation as banking people, and even, you know, just people in a regulated area. And this was also a key to balance the regulation and the innovation. But I would say that on the flip side, sometimes the regulation can be a source of innovation, just surprisingly. So this is what happened with PSD2, for example, and the entire open banking concept. So definitely, and regulatory framework in other countries, because we also have Asia, what I mentioned, Australia, and now Latin America, Mexico is very active in the open banking. But what happened is PSD2, the objective of PSD2 was to make the entire payment and banking market more competitive. And that's why more innovative. So we see a lot of new players, TPPs, third-party players, providers to coming into this play. So regulation can be a source of innovation as well. But of course, if we talk about data protection, if we talk about KYC, for example, if we talk about GDPR, if we talk about the AML, so anti-money laundering, I couldn't say that's a source for innovation. This is much more restricted, and definitely this is a much more regulated area. And I think that this is exactly the very much dependent on the approach of regulator. And you have at least 2 different approaches, like generally speaking, not only in Europe, but also in other just geographies. So either regulator is very much like intrusive in a way. So basically just trying to push with regulation, but it's happening just not that often right now. Or the regulator is quite like following the market and observing what's happening, is much more facilitative, and it's much more adaptive to the market. And this is exactly, for example, this is the example of the Singapore, the master, or for example, the FCA in the UK, also Lithuania. In Lithuania, there is a central bank, which is a regulator for banking and payment services, and they are very close and they cooperate very closely with the market. They follow the market, so they are trying to understand the challenges. So they are not trying to push with the regulations or trying to impose anything. They are rather more consultative and trying to consult with the market. So I think this is a very good approach. So just to partner and to basically to invite all the stakeholders and to build the regulatory frame, also the regulatory sandbox for the new players when you can consult. And this is exactly to balance the level of innovation with the level of regulation, and not to kill the innovation, of course.
Okay. Anna, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great, because in between I couldn't. So let's take one question, a direct audience question directly to you. Okay.
Okay.
You can decide to answer or not. So we have a person from, we have one person from the audience who's from the media. So Mr. Krishna Tripathi. Mr. Tripathi, can you please unmute and ask the question?
Yeah, good noon, ma'am. This is Krishnanand Tripathi from ETV Bharat. I wanted to know how well India's innovation, payment innovation, like UPI and launch of Rupee debit card and credit card is received in the Western market, and where there is a scope for Indian products in global payment market. And I have a follow-up question on cryptocurrencies.
On the cryptocurrencies, okay. Yes. So I will start with the latter questions on the cryptocurrencies, because I would rather bring more just the broader perspective. So of course we don't have much time to discuss it, but instead of talking about cryptocurrencies, which is of course like something that I didn't touch here, I would say that digital currencies and digital assets, this is something which is really of interest not only of regulators but all the market stakeholders. And just talking about Europe again, so there is like a digital finance program and digital finance initiative that is covering just some points, main points and most important points for the payments landscape in Europe. And we talked about cross-border real-time payments. So this is exactly touched upon. Also to make payments invisible and to make them seamless. So just to enhance the customer experience. But one of the points in the initiative is also digital assets and digital currencies. And digital currencies, of course, can be issued by central banks. And we see some of the examples in China, for example, and of course, some attempts to make it happen. So I think this is very much of importance, because when you talk about alternative payments, and alternative payment methods, so definitely digital currencies are just part of this agenda. Cryptocurrencies, this is another layer, and definitely this is something that is also just a kind of area of interest for many regulators across the globe. But I wouldn't comment on that. I have my own view, but I just don't want to share it right now with the audience. I'm also focusing on digital payments, but not necessarily on cryptocurrencies. And your first question was about UPI, and just what was the context of your first question?
It is an Indian innovation. Where
Yes.
is the scope for this Indian innovation in the global payment or fintech market?
So what is the scope of this?
UPI in the global context.
In the global context. Yeah, yes. So as I said, because I mentioned some of the national payment schemes, and of course, this is also the question of the scale. I mentioned the Russian example, I mentioned the Turkey example. There are some smaller, there are some countries also, so I think in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, they have their own payment scheme. And this is exactly the example of the national payment scheme, which is very much inclusive as well. And very much, because all of these payment schemes or payment initiatives, they are much more, I would say, tailored into the needs of the local market. So in terms of the innovation, this is more on the model and functional scope, I would say.
Okay. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you so much for your question.
Yep. So Anna, we are like almost on the 1 hour of this thing, but you have another 5 minutes or so. We could take a couple of questions.
Yeah, I have a couple of minutes, so I can just answer some of the questions.
Okay. Yeah. Let's take a question from Murtuza, because I would prefer to take the audience in the question. Which region would be having a large number of digital payment enablement? And he's asking, and is India making a huge mark globally?
Oh yeah, sure. So very much, it very much depends how you look at things. And of course, if you look in absolute terms, so that this is about the scale, and definitely India is, and China, for example, these are the leading markets. But of course, if you see the relative terms, that are some of the markets that are also very much penetrated by digital payments, and exactly the Nordics are example of, for example, Sweden and Norway, they are like almost 100%, which is of course not possible, but 90-something% cashless societies, including the digital payment proliferation. So of course, these are not big geographies, but the level of penetration of digital payments is very high. And if you look at some of the Asian countries, so this is exactly happening in Korea as well, and in some other countries. I would really see like just not necessarily big geographies and big demographies, but then just the smaller countries that are really just highly penetrated by digital payments, starting from the cashless payments. And if you look at Europe, for example, there are some of the countries that are in the forefront of contactless payments. Still, we talk about the physical environment. So you have the POS initiated payment, but a high penetration and high uptake of contactless payments, for example, in Poland. And Poland is also very much cashless. And Poland is also having, as I said, just the mobile banking, the mobile payment initiative, and the own scheme initiated by banks, which is also very, very interesting. This is not another like a fintech company. It was founded more than 5 years ago by banks, incumbent banks. So contactless payments, although it's not like a part of very digital revolution, but still is a part of the cashless revolution, also enhanced and enabled or accelerated by pandemic. And I think this is also very important, because still we shop in physical locations, although of course the payment shift is going into the e-commerce, into digital economy.
Okay, thank you, Anna. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, unable to take any more questions because we already passed the 5 o'clock India time, which is 1 hour since we started, and Anna also has other things to do. So, Anna, before we wind up, could you please could you give a brief summary of what are the what you see as emerging trends in payments and innovations?
Sure. So definitely we look into digital payments, and we look into technologies, regulations, and some new business models and functionality scopes. So these are the categories, but definitely we talk about biometrics and different types of biometrics. We talk about subscriptions, we talk about conversation AI and voice. And of course, we didn't have the chance to dive deeper into all of these. These are like some of the sneak peek of the things that are happening, because just you took a very broad perspective, also regulatory, and also just not only B2C payments, but also B2B real time. So this is really a huge area. And also just digital payments are on everybody's agenda. So of course, cross-border payment and real-time instant payments, and new fintech, and not only fintech, but new players coming into we didn't touch upon tech players really very in detail, but of course tech players, big tech, so the tech giants will be part of that, and we see that very much as well. And also the models, so the platform models, but also partnerships being established between incumbent banks and fintechs, and banks being more and more open, not only into opening up the infrastructure, but of course open APIs. This is exactly what's happening. So how you can easily integrate and seamlessly integrate. But definitely, last but not least, one of the most important things is going into the enhancing customer experience and making the payments invisible and seamless, something that we didn't call, which is embedded finance or embedded payments. And basically that the payment experience is really just in behind, and definitely not noticeable for users. They can shop, they can just enjoy the shopping experience for products and services, and they can also enter the banking services, but this is quite invisible. So we talk about embedded finance, and definitely this is the trend to go, and interoperability, but interoperability being still a challenge. And a challenge and a problem to be addressed or to be solved. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Anna. So, ladies and gentlemen, we would want to wind up the show. Thank you very much for being part of the show. I'm enjoying discussing the discussions that we had with Anna. We had a lot more questions, but as you know, time flies. And when we have a personality like Anna, time really simply flies because there is so much to talk about. There's so much to do. What we could do is, ladies and gentlemen, is invite Anna once more because I had quite a few questions to ask, and we couldn't complete in this short period. So at some other time, we would invite her at her minutes and take some more questions that I just couldn't get it across to Anna. Anna, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure, and the time flies by exactly. So maybe if there is any next occasion, so we can be much more focused on a specific topic, it will be easier to cover something like, just in a more comprehensive way. But of course, I enjoy the discussion. I enjoy the question very much. They were flying also like, from one topic to another. But yeah, so thank you so much for your interest and for your attention, everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Have a nice day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.